Sometimes you don't fail because you are not good enough. You fail because you are trying to be good enough, not to enjoy what you're doing, not to follow your own rhythm, but to prove something to someone or to yourself. And quietly, what once felt natural starts to feel heavy. You remember a time when you were good at something without thinking too much, before deadlines, before rankings, before performance reviews, before expectations had names. You worked freely. You learned naturally. You made mistakes without panic. And slowly, something changed. Your work became a test. Not, how can I do this better? But, what will this say about me? Every result started to feel like a judgment. Every mistake, like a verdict. So you tightened. You prepared more, controlled more, forced more. And strangely, the more you tried to be precise, the less natural you became. The more you wanted to succeed, the harder it was to move. Not because you lost your skill, but because you no longer trusted the part of you that once knew how to act without fear. This feeling did not begin with you. There was an old story about an archer. Once, in an ancient kingdom, there lived an archer whose skill was unmatched. When he stood alone in the forest, shooting at leaves, stones, or distant branches, his arrows flew effortlessly. He did not aim too hard. He did not calculate too much. He simply lifted the bow, and the arrow found its way. People began to notice. They invited him to competitions. They praised him. They offered him rewards. Soon, he was invited to shoot before nobles and kings, and something changed. The first time he stood on the platform, with money promised for a perfect shot, his hands trembled. He stared at the target, not as a piece of wood, but as a test. If I hit this, I am worthy. If I miss, I am nothing. He raised the bow and missed, again and again. Confused, he returned to the forest, to the place where he had never failed, but even there, his arrows no longer flew the same. He was no longer shooting at leaves. He was shooting at expectations, at fear, at the image of himself in others' eyes. The master who had once trained him said quietly, "When you shot for no one, you were a true archer. Now you shoot to prove something, and in trying to hit the target, you have forgotten how to release the arrow." There is a quiet way people lose themselves in adulthood, not by one wrong decision, but by slowly living as the person they are expected to be. At first, it feels harmless. You take one role, then another. You meet one expectation, then another, and each step feels reasonable. Until one day, you notice something small. You no longer ask what feels true for you. You ask what fits your position. Not, what do I want now? But, what should someone like me want? And this is how life slowly becomes a performance. Not because you are pretending, but because you are no longer allowed to act without being evaluated, without being measured, without being judged. Slowly, your actions stop coming from the inside. They come from the role you protect, from the image you maintain, from the version of yourself others have learned to expect. And this is the heart of identity crisis. Not that you don't know who you are, but that you no longer remember who you were before you learned who you had to be. Perhaps the archer did not lose his skill. Perhaps he lost the part of himself that once knew how to act without performing. She was 48, respected in her field, trusted by her team, known as someone who always handled things well. Her calendar was full. Her decisions mattered. People listened when she spoke. From the outside, her life looked complete. One evening, after a long meeting, she sat alone in her car in the parking lot. Engine off, hands on the steering wheel. Not tired, not sad, just strangely empty. She tried to remember the last time she had made a decision only because she wanted to. Not because it was expected. Not because it was responsible. Not because it was good for her role. Just because it felt true. She couldn't remember. She knew exactly who she was at work. A leader, a manager, someone reliable. She knew exactly who she was at home, a mother, a partner, someone who held things together. But sitting there, in the quiet of the car, she realized something simple. She knew who she was to everyone else. She did not know who she was to herself. And for the first time, success did not feel like an achievement. It felt like a very well-performed role that she no longer knew how to step out of. On a Sunday afternoon, with nothing urgent to do, he sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. The house was quiet. No meetings, no deadlines, no one needing anything from him. His wife asked gently, "What do you feel like doing today?" He opened his mouth to answer, and then stopped. Not because he was tired, not because he was busy, because he did not know. He could list his responsibilities, his routines, his roles. But when it came to something simple, what do you enjoy? What do you want? What feels like you? There was no clear answer. He realized something unsettling. For years, his life had been organized around what is needed, what is expected, what is responsible. And slowly, without any crisis, without any rebellion, he had lost track of what was chosen. Not chosen by duty, not chosen by role, chosen by himself. He was not unhappy. He was functioning. He was reliable. He was fine. And yet, sitting there with his coffee, he understood something quietly. He knew exactly who he was to everyone else. He did not know who he was when no one was asking anything from him. And that, he realized, is another way a person can lose himself. And perhaps identity is not something we suddenly lose. Perhaps it is something we slowly stop listening to. Perhaps the archer did not forget the target. Perhaps he forgot who he was before the target began to matter. And perhaps many of us are not lost because life is difficult. We are lost because we have become very good at living as someone else, very good at playing our roles, at meeting expectations, at protecting the version of ourselves the world has learned to recognize. And slowly, without any dramatic moment, we stop hearing the quieter voice inside, the one that once said, "This feels right. This feels wrong. This is mine." Not because we chose to ignore it, but because we were busy being responsible, being reliable, being successful. Perhaps identity is not something we need to find. Perhaps it is something we only need to stop running away from. And maybe, for now, it is enough to notice one simple thing. When no one is watching, when no one is asking, when no one is expecting anything from you, who are you then? You don't need to answer. Just notice what becomes quiet when the roles fall away. And that can be a beginning.